Welcome back, America. We have our buddy, Professor John Yoo at the UC Berkeley Law. Professor Yoo, I hope you're doing well. We have a judge in California who orders 6 agencies to rehire thousands of fired federal probationary workers. And he writes this scathing, it's like an op-ed, in the New York Times. It's not a very judicious type of an opinion. He's a Clinton appointee. I see these Biden, Clinton, Obama appointees are having a hell of a fun time. Where does this judge getting off ordering the President of the United States to rehire people that he's firing?
Hey, Mark, it's great to be with you. This is a unwarranted, illegal action by this judge. As you point out, this judge has no power to order the entire federal government how to run personnel. Certainly a judge all the way out here where I am, out in San Francisco. This judge is basically what's going on is this judge is a species of the problem that is affecting many of Trump's executive orders now, which the Supreme Court may put a stop to soon, but where a single judge in the country tells the entire government to stop some policy he doesn't like, even though that judge only is supposed to rule on a case that sits before him with parties that are before him. The second thing is, it's even worse, is I don't think this judge even has any power to hear this case. If you're a federal employee, God love them, you don't get to stay permanently, you're a probationary employee, and the government says, we're not going to hire you for full time. You could stay for a year, but not permanently. You don't get to go to the federal courts and say, I want every single federal employee in the country not to be fired. That's what's happened here.
It's stunning to me. Listen to this paragraph, and I read this for the country, too. It's a sad, sad day, he writes in his order, when our government would fire some good employee and say it was based on performance, when they knew good and well that's a lie. That should not have been done in our country. It was a sham in order to avoid statutory requirements. That's pretty reckless, don't you think, John?
Not even reckless. I think it violates Supreme Court opinion, because the Supreme Court has said, for example, the travel ban case, which I know you talked about a lot back in Trump's first term. There was a judge just like this judge who stopped it because he said, Trump can't stop people from coming to the country because I think his mental intent is he's a racist. And the Supreme Court had to stop that guy and said, judges aren't allowed to presume what the reasons are behind the executive's decisions. The executive has the power to run the executive branch under Article 2 of the Constitution. Judges can't say, I think the president's lying here, or I think the president isn't telling the truth there. They just have to say, is the order terminating the employee legal on its face? And this judge refuses to do that and says casting aspersions on whether the president of the United States and cabinet officials are telling the truth.
He says here, it can be done, a reduction in force, if it's in accordance with the law. This case is not about that. What this case is about is really an attempt to do a reduction in force through the Office of Personnel Management. Well, they're in charge of personnel in the federal government. He said that having OPM, the federal government's chief human resources agency, direct departments to fire probationary workers was an easy way to get a reduction in force underway and a gimmick. Isn't it a unitary executive branch? It's all under the president. So whether it's OPM or whether it's a department, isn't this just an excuse by this judge?
I agree, Mark. This judge is not reading Supreme Court opinions issued by the Roberts Court itself. This is not some theory Trump made up. This is not some theory, that some crackpot made up. The Constitution, as you said, Mark, vests all the executive power of the federal government into one person, the president. Everyone who works for the executive branch is the assistant to the president to help him carry out the laws and defend the country. John Roberts, no right-wing conservative, has written several opinions in the last 2 decades saying, therefore, everyone who assists the president in executing federal law must be responsible and removable by him. And so you're right, Mark. Yes, maybe the OPM is looking at the whole executive branch and saying we need to lose some people here. Maybe we need more people there. That's why we have a central authority in charge of the executive branch. So it's not like 13 different cabinet agencies just running themselves the way they see fit.
And that's why we have elections. We get to decide on who's going to be in charge of the executive branch to make these decisions. You know what I'm seeing here, John Yoo? If you're a liberal president and you put in place your policies, you're hiring like a drunken Marxist, you're spending money, you're pushing it through the door as fast as you can at EPA, on and on and on. What I'm finding here is that these activist left-wing Democrat judges are trying to constitutionalize or otherwise legalize these policy decisions that an executive makes. Joe Biden can pretty much have the run of the path, but when a new president comes in and says, I'm going to reverse some of these things, I'm going to trim the federal government, if he can't do that, if the president of the executive branch can't have some level of decision-making when it comes to personnel in his own branch of the government, or on records to look at them to see if people are actually getting paid properly, or to withhold payments for 60 days so they can take a look, then what the hell is he?
What the Congress wants him to be, what these liberal judges think the president is a figurehead. What they've always wanted to do is cut the strings between the president and the cabinet officers and the agency. Because as you said, Mark, the key to the executive is electoral accountability. It's only the president who gets elected. All those other people, right, they don't have to run for re-election. They're not accountable to the people. And so these Democrat judges, I think, hope that the president can't control these agencies, then they'll be taken over by progressive bureaucrats who answer to no one and then drive forward on their own ideological mission, which is not the one that the American people chose through elections.
That's so important. What you're saying is you immunize the entire massive bureaucracy. You immunize the power of the ruling class, the unelected branch that's not even in the Constitution. So there's literally nothing you can do about it. There's no recourse whatsoever. Is that a constitutional republic, John Yoo?
No, that's some kind of Germanic bureaucracy from the 19th century, which is where the idea came from. Think about it this way. Suppose this decision doesn't get overturned, and I hope it will be. Then if President Trump orders some prosecutor to drop some case, why would you listen to the president? He can't do anything to you. He can't fire you. He can't order you to do anything. Gives you complete freedom to ignore the only elected officer of the entire executive branch, which is what the progressives have always wanted.
It's just amazing. A lot of these guys are senior status. This guy in California, we had a guy in senior status in Seattle. They managed to get these cases. What is it with these guys? They go on senior status. They have a full docket. Is that a way? I'm starting to think that's a way just to add another judge. Something's, they turned 79. The guy in Seattle's like 85 or something like that. But he's around for all these cases. Somebody needs to look at that too, don't you think? They need to look at the whole thing. You're a district judge in San Francisco, and you're issuing an order that really relates to Washington, D.C. and environs, and yet you're issuing it for the whole country. I mean, I hope the Supreme Court will do something about this, John Yoo, but I wasn't excited about Barrett and Roberts the last time around with their one-sentence unexplained order.
Yeah, I don't blame you, Mark. I was disappointed, too, in this case. You're talking about the USAID funding cutoff case. I think Justice Alito and the four conservatives on that case got it completely right in dissent. But I think what's gone on is we've now seen that Judge even there went too far, and he's getting spanked back right now. Maybe the Supreme Court will continue.
John Yoo, you're great. Thank you, buddy. We appreciate your courage and telling the truth, given where you work. I'm just being honest.
Thanks, Mark. Not easy, my friend.
We love you, buddy. Take care of yourself.